Okay, next will be Ordinance 21-20, an ordinance for public hearing on first reading to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, zoning, Chapter 4, Section 13, outdoor site lighting to create new provisions and updates and to organize existing provisions. Town of Farragut applicant.
Yes, Mayor, this ordinance basically is updating our outdoor site lighting provisions, which are in Chapter 4 of our zoning ordinance. We at the staff level have known for a long time that this part of the zoning ordinance needed to be revisited, and when we had the application for ball field lighting submitted, we started looking at our other lighting provisions and working with a local lighting expert who's actually a resident of the town to help us to update our other outdoor site lighting provisions. There's nothing in the ordinance before you tonight that deals with ball field lighting. That's completely, we haven't gotten to that point yet. If you know, that's going to be a later discussion, and this is completely separate from that. This is basically just taking the existing provisions that we have in our outdoor site lighting and making updates to those, and also addressing some lights that we don't really have standards for currently, like string lights, decorative string lights, that we probably would want to encourage, particularly in like a mixed-use town center area for, you know, outdoor restaurant space. You know, Bollard and landscape lights, we don't really have any standards for those. So that's mainly what this ordinance is trying to address, as well as just organizing the ordinance language so that different information is much easier to find, and it's all kind of grouped together and kind of has a symmetry to it in the way it's presented. So it should be a lot easier for designers and users and just anybody that wants to look at our standards to understand you know, what our requirements are and what the submittal information would be. Some of the specific things that we've done in this ordinance, like I said earlier, just organize the information. It's pretty much a rewrite of the existing provisions, and that's why in your packet I didn't include like a strike through and a new language, because it was there were so many changes that it would have just gotten lost. So that it's, you know, a pretty substantial revision. We do provide for clarification to some of our existing lighting, like pole lights, wall lights, under canopy lights. We worked with this lighting expert to figure out, are there ways that we can lessen the brightness of some of the newer LED fixtures, because they really are kind of very different from older technologies, and they can be fairly bright. So one of the things that he suggested was we needed to develop what's called a Kelvin temperature standard, and this diagram on the screen kind of shows what that is talking about. It's basically the color temperature of light, and as you get to a higher Kelvin number, the light is brighter and more white, and the lower you go, it's more soft and yellowish kind of hue to the color. So what we want to try to avoid with the LED lights is when you get above pretty much 5,000 K, it starts getting pretty bright and can be something that could create some glare. So we've added that as a standard in our ordinance. As I mentioned earlier, developed some standards for decorative string lights, bollard and landscape lights, and that's basically the main changes. It's still a fairly short ordinance. I think it's pretty straightforward. We get a lot of positive comments actually about our lighting ordinance because it is kind of simple and straightforward, as opposed to some communities that I've looked at. It's very technical. So when we presented this to the Planning Commission in November, they did unanimously recommend approval, and the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 21-20 on first reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any resident questions?
No, sir.
On this one? No? Okay. I guess we'll start out with Alderman Pinchot.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Alderman Burnett.
Yeah, Mark, this scale is dealing with temperature, right?
Yeah.
But there's also color in the middle, and so I guess my question was, can you have colors that get into that white and blue whose temperature can read into the 3,000 and 4,000? So for instance,
No.
like the little lights may be coated with something, so you have an effect of a whiter or a lighter color, but you don't have the Kelvin or the temperature reading of a 6,000, 7,000. Or
You
is
might
that
be
just
able to put some kind of colored frosted
Right.
cover that could alter, even though the temperature would still be the same, could alter its effect. But one of the things that the lighting expert that helped us said that basically most of the lights, non-residential, are usually around 4,000 Kelvin, and that's kind of a color that is not too harsh, but it's also provides a sufficient light, a sufficient amount of light to illuminate most settings. So there are some applications where a higher K would probably be more appropriate, like ball field lighting potentially. Would be something you would have a more bright light. But that was one of the things that that we asked him to look at, is we've gotten some complaints about some of our LED lights just being really, really bright. And are there any things that we can build into our requirements that could address that? He chose the 4,000K because that's a pretty common product that can be purchased, and it's pretty common in the industry. And it kind of is kind of in the middle as far as the brightness scale. So he thought it was a good compromise. Now we do specify a lower K
Well, that's what I was wondering.
in the town
Isn't that
center.
But when you think of string lights, though, if they come in at 4,000, that's above what?
Well, they would be 3,000, I think, in the ordinance.
Right, the ordinance says 3,000, but you
Yep.
said that the standard would be 4,000
for
the
other
lighting.
lights.
For
other
bigger
lights.
LEDs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason for the lower standard for that, and we talked with him about that, was that most of the time in that application, you're kind of wanting a softer ambiance, and you don't want the real bright lights, but you want it to be bright enough to where it is not unsafe under the area that's being illuminated, and people can actually see their food and where they're going, because there are some requirements out there that, like dark sky provisions, that would recommend something lower than 3,000. So we chose 3,000 because we thought it achieved the objective of what the string light setting would be targeting, and provide enough light to be effective without overpowering.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Pavel?
I have nothing.
Nothing? Okay. This was all very interesting, Mark, and you did a great job with it.
Well, I learned a lot myself. Mark Pilson was the consultant, and he lives in town, like I said, and he really knows what he's talking about, and I really appreciate his assistance with this. So I couldn't have done it without him, because I really didn't know what I was doing.
Well, it's very well done, and we do appreciate the effort on that. Okay, I'll ask the town recorder now for a roll call vote.
Alderman Pinchot.
Yes.
Alderman Povlin. Yes. Alderman Burnett.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Mayor Williams, yes. Okay. Let the record show that the ordinance 2120 has been approved on the first reading.